which, as we talked about in the past, is why we don't plan on making any multiplayer games. Was it you said, Sam, earlier? People are like octopuses.
Yeah. Can't contain them, man.
Yeah, like an octopus, anywhere, anything its beak can fit through, it's just going to go in.
Butterscotch
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 488 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Matt, and I'm a miscellaneous programmer.
I'm Sam, and I'm the artist.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today's October 4th, 22x4. Today, sorry, hold on. I got confused because I was like, is that a thing? But then I was thinking of like
10-4.
May the 4th.
Oh, yeah, 10-4.
October 4th is nothing, right?
It's nothing, but it feels good. 10-4 feels good.
It feels 10-4 feels like it should be something.
Also, we're about to get into a Balatro discussion, and there is a Joker in Balatro that's like
the
on
10
tens and
walkie-talkie
fours.
Joker.
Yeah, so I feel like there's like all this is kind of coming together in your brain at the same time.
Yeah. I saw the day. I was like, this is something, but it's nothing yet. Anyway, 10-4, fellas. 10-4, 22x4.
Over.
Before we go any further, profanity warning. There's going to be swears in this show. Yep. And we'd also like to thank our recurring supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you so much for your monthly donations to help keep the podcast going. All right, now 10-4, let's talk about what's going on.
What's going on
right now. So first of all, since we just mentioned Balatro, I feel like we should get into that. So it was a few weeks ago, 2 or 3
episodes. Something like
Balatro coming to mobile. I had never heard of it at the time of that episode. But based on what everybody was saying, I was like, all right, well, once this hits mobile, I'm gonna check it out. So I picked it up over the weekend, much to my dismay, because it's really good. And it sort of deleted my weekend.
It's one of those special kinds of games, right? Where it's just like, if you start, well, you're in danger now. And you're
just doing it.
Your sense of time is it's gone.
Well, it hits my brain in the exact same way as like Baldur's Gate 3 did, which is weird. Which is it's all about like interesting combinatorial scenarios where you're like, I wonder if I could get these things to happen if I do this like this, right? It's very RNG. It's lots of random stuff going on. But also, I'll say, for some reason, based on how it was described, how you guys described it in the episode where we talked about it, I feel like I was expecting it to be more of a poker game and less of a cookie clicker. Yeah. But it's basically like 80% cookie clicker, 20% playing poker hands.
The core of it is poker hands and playing them and like the randomness of the draw of the poker hand, right? But it so quickly moves outside of that space that I think it's fair. Your description is fair. Just say that like the 20% foundation is poker, but the rest of it is just something else entirely.
Yep.
Yeah, because you're not playing poker. You're just creating poker hands to get points, and then depending on all this other bullshit you do, the points for doing the same thing get bigger and bigger. Like I hit a point where I hit my high score that I hit, and now I haven't played it since because I'm like I'm done now.
That's good. Yeah.
Where I got 1 million chips in one hand, and I got the achievement for that. And I'm pretty sure I did that with a 2-pair. Yeah, which at the start of the game, a 2-pair gives you like 40 chips.
Yeah,
and then based on all the crazy multipliers and other shit you can do, the same thing you do, which is exactly what something like Cookie Clicker does, right? Where it's like you're not really doing anything new, but number get big and dopamine go up.
Oh man, yeah, that'll get you good for a whole weekend. I had the same.
It did. Yeah.
I had the same thing where after I beat it, then I just stopped playing it. It's one of those where it's like I think if you've played enough games, it has like that taste to it, where you're like, I understand you. I know what this is. Like if I keep playing this, just number get big, and that's kind of that's cool, and I could do that longer if I wanted to, but also I have to set a limit right internally myself on like because it does have an ending. Because like when you beat it, you can go into endless mode and just see how far you can go. Which of course I do every time because it's like I made it this far. Let's see, But the pace at which the chip requirements go up is like it's a geometric growth. So I think the round that I ended up losing was something like I needed like 3 million chips to beat the first blind, and I did, and then I needed like
6 million to beat the next blind. And I did. And then I needed like 10 million to beat the final one. And it's like adding several million chips per blind. Like at a certain point, it just like you just can't, the numbers don't work. And so like you're just going to hit an end point to it. And then you can play with different decks that have different constraints. And so after I beat it the first time, I was like, oh, let me try some of these other things to see like how that affects the strategy. But like you're saying, I could see myself just kind of doing that forever. Of like, ooh, what if this? What if that? And I just needed to put it down. So it's kind of as far as like, we talked about the nail whiff spectrum. I'm like, this game nailed it, and it nailed it hard enough that I had to uninstall it.
Yep.
Nailed it nailed it too close to the sun.
Yep.
So mad props to the creator of Balatro, because just what a vision for a game that was just exactly delivered. I was not expecting it to be pixel art, and I'm not sure why it has a CRTV like filter on it.
It's gotta be fun. Gotta be kind
You
of
can turn that off, which I did because I was like, I don't want that. But, and I also turned off the music because I also got a little bit repetitive.
The music also has like a weird, like off kilter sort of almost a horror vibe to it that like it made me unsettled like the longer I played it. So
it is a little unsettling. And the music does do some really interesting things that I noticed where depending on what you're doing, it kind of like gets filters applied to it or kind of changes tenor a little bit in certain ways. Which is pretty cool. But at the same time, it's like, if you've been listening to that same song for a couple of hours, then at a certain point it gets to be much. But yeah, so I mean, if you haven't checked out Balatro yet, make sure you've got like a whole
peril, I guess.
Yeah, make sure you've got like a whole weekend open and then just slam that thing.
Yep.
It's very, very good.
And I think it also is one of those things where if you do tend to get like really caught up in something to the point where it's detrimental, I might actually give it a pass, honestly, because it is it pulls you in. It could create problems if that's kind of where your brain leans. So
you got one of those addictive personalities. Set this one
highly
up for
recommend.
Sure.
But with a big caveat, which is I think like the kinds of caveats that we could give. This is kind of an interesting one because usually it's like, well, you won't like it if you're just kind of a person or whatever. It's kind of but this was just like this one
is dangerous.
It could be dangerous.
That's the feeling. After handling it for a bit, you're like, I should put this down.
You're like, there's too much power in this.
It's radioactive.
Yep.
Yeah, so big nailed it on that one. Proceed with caution. Great game.
Great game.
All right, so Sam, you got a vaccine story.
I do
from this past week. Let's hear about it. What happened?
So let me roll this one out, okay? Because
all right, lay out the groundwork.
Here's the deal. So I go in yesterday, getting that double vax in the left arm. Right, both of one arm, because who wants two numb arms? You know what I mean?
Yeah, just fuck that arm up.
Just fuck that left one. Boom. So I go in there.
Double, I assume, is the COVID plus flu.
Yeah.
Double.
Yeah.
The clue.
So I go get the clue, and they stab me in the arm, and all goes well. And then last night, I'm trying to go to sleep. And as with all the COVID vaccines that I've had, I'm having to getting just sore as fuck all over, right? Just like really sore. Oh, yeah. It's like it somehow summons all of my ancient wounds from like my cheerleading days and everything that are in my back and just like inflames everything again. Yeah. So I'm getting just like real sore and my arm is just killing me. So I lay down trying to go to bed and I'm just like flopping all over the place, basically all night. And luckily, because I'm trying to make sure Diana can sleep effectively because we have a newborn, I'm sleeping in the side room. So like I'm not disturbing her sleep with all my acrobatics trying to get comfortable over the course of the night. But I think around like 3 a.m. or so, I somehow managed to fall asleep and I'm having this nightmare. And it's like kind of crazy. I don't have nightmares very often, but I'm getting like attacked by something. And then suddenly in the nightmare, I say to myself, you just have to find your voice. And then I started yelling in the nightmare. But I wake up because I'm screaming. But the scream is just going, because of course I'm fucking asleep. And so so
you just kind of
I mummied myself awake. And it was like the weirdest shit. And then I just kind of giggled about it. I told Diane about it when I woke up. And both of us were just dying laughing because it was like.
She didn't wake up from that?
She was in the next room. She's fine. So
okay.
Yeah, it was just a quiet mode, you know.
I think it was in the dreams, like this epic battle feeling moment. I'd be like, find your voice. And then I'm like,
I mean, it makes such a good like.
I found it. It's not great, but I did find
It makes such a good
God.
video of like like quickly snapping like from the in dream to like the real world. Of the,
yeah.
I actually,
Oh
I had
my
a-
God.
I didn't have
That's
like
what I feel like whenever I see like a dog dreaming and they're just like making these little tiny barks and their legs are just like doing this twitching thing. You know, in their dream they're doing something epic as fuck, but in real life they're just kind of twitching and like
It's
making little
diluted.
whimpers.
Doesn't translate. Yeah. So that's my backstory. That's all I got.
Okay, Adam, were you saying something about this?
No, I wasn't having like nightmares. I think it was just like when you're about to fall asleep and you get like twitchy,
Twitch.
and you have those. And a few weeks ago, I had a similar kind of a thing where I was like starting to fall asleep and then just made a similar kind of noise. But it was as I was going to sleep, so I woke myself up doing it, and my wife was still awake. So then I'm like simultaneously really amused and also really embarrassed. About that moment. God.
Oh my God, this shit cracks me up.
Sleeping is
Stuff
chaos.
like that. So
Yeah,
good.
I mean that's just part of marriage, though. You know, like
Surprise! screams.
your partner's gonna see you in every conceivable embarrassing scenario, including weird sleepless mummy grunts. That's just part of it. You know, it's the
find
beauty
your
of it.
voice.
All right, well, I got one final kind of life update before we get into some studio stuff, which is it's a brag, and I'm gonna fucking send it.
Send it.
Okay, I lifted 2 million pounds this year so far.
That's good. That timeline tracks. You know, I mean, that's fucking impressive. Just straight out the gate. But if the timeline was any shorter, I'd have concerns.
Well, the thing is,
Government would be
definitely-
coming for you. You know,
It definitely could be because I've tracked 110 workouts this year. So we're 2/3 of the way through the year, or no, right? No, 3/4, right?
yeah, we're coming up on the last quarter. Yeah.
Yeah. So 110 workouts, 260 days, something like that. So I definitely could have done quite a bit more. And I really didn't ramp it up until kind of partway through. But yes, 23,428 reps total across 110 workouts, 2 million pounds. So
next time
almost
someone challenges you and they say, "Do you even lift?" You could say, "Yes, 2 million
I've
pounds."
lifted it all.
yeah, people be like, "What do you bench?" I'd be like, 2 million. It takes a while. It takes about 9 months.
Yeah, that really should be the question. It's like that's the timescale question missing from that. You know,
It's not how much do you bench, it's how much have you benched?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
just
cumulative.
total.
And there's something like when the number gets that big, there's something that it flips working out back into this like absurdism territory, you know, where it's like the
What does that even
Sisyphean
mean?
nature of the task where like you're lifting things but accomplishing nothing. You lifted so many things, but like everything's right where it was.
It is
you know?
Sisyphean.
Yeah,
For those who
it just
don't know,
keeps going.
Sisyphus is the ancient, was it Greek or ancient
I
Greek
don't know.
mythology?
Roman Greek.
I think it's Greek.
Roman Greek. It's one of those things, one of those myths of like this
Old time.
dude who was like banished, and his punishment was to like push this boulder up a hill just forever, right? And then like whenever
Rolls
it
back
got
down,
high enough, it
pushes
would just roll back
up.
down. Which is really what health maintenance is, because it's like if I stop for 4 weeks. Then I basically have to just start over again.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
I think
I
it's-
will lose most of my strength and endurance.
It's
in that
funny though,
time.
because you're doing it to maintain your human body, right? But to do it, you are just like lifting up a few million pounds, like to make that happen. And I think that's where the contrast is very funny to me, because like in theory, you could accomplish something external to your body by lifting a few million
2 million
pounds.
pounds. Yeah.
I don't know what, like, not that you should be. I'm just saying, like, if there's a funny.
Adam's saying you need to go get a
Match
job
there?
at a warehouse or something.
Yeah,
Become
like
a forklift.
Yeah, something like that, like lift up a thing and put it on something else.
Well, the problem with that is diversity of targeting muscle groups. You know, like if you just spend all day just lifting bricks, then like your lower back is gonna get. You're gonna really work that.
I feel like
you're gonna
the
lift your legs.
next move needs to, because like I'm imagining, so CrossFit's like all about like picking up all kinds of things and putting them places, right?
Yep.
Including yourself using various equipment, right? But like I'm imagining like it seems like there's got to be a business opportunity here for some kind of a manufacturing situation where you go like, I'm going to get away from the conveyor belt idea and I'm going to instead be like fully human powered, but like take that side where I'm going to try to come up with something that can be made, but it is a gym so that people actually pay me to make this
to do manual labor.
And then
that is what working out is.
So the problem with this is that, you know, everybody's on a different place in their gym journey. And to get somebody to a point where they could like reasonably come in and hoist stuff that you need hoisted for, you know, some kind of production line, you need pretty consistent and strong people with good endurance.
But you only need that if you have to have consistent output, which you don't have to have if you're not paying your
if it's all volunteer work and it's open 24/7.
Exactly. Yeah. Then just like stuff happens and basically it's converting the stuff that people are doing anyway. And like it doesn't have to be capitalistic either. You could go down the community management route, you know, where it's like some kind of community project and was trying to accomplish something, but designed around
volunteering. Isn't it just volunteering?
Yeah, but volunteering in a way where you've designed it around the outcome is that you have exercised, you know.
Right. Like, you're like, this is PEC's volunteering day.
Yeah, exactly. So you solve two problems at once, which is everyone's getting fit, right? But also,
I mean, if
every time they lifted something up, they didn't have to put it back down where it was, you know, because now that work turned into something. Yeah. Because what is work besides picking something up and putting it in another place?
Yeah. I do I'm now thinking about, so my first child weighs like 30 something pounds probably at this point. And I picked that one up every day, you know, a lot, like multiple times. Usually
holds sustaining. Yeah.
Yeah. And holds sustaining just my right arm. My right arm is becoming, I'm like a fucking lobster at this point, or like actually, I guess not lobster, one of those fucking crabs that has the giant arm for dueling and then the other one for doing normal stuff.
Have you seen this new this young tennis player Alcaraz? He's like he's got one huge arm. Like, you got to look this guy up. He's just dominating everybody right now in the professional tennis scene. But this dude is so asymmetrical. His right arm is like the Hulk. I mean, his serve is crazy. But his left arm, he really just uses it to like support his backhand.
It's like an appendix.
Yeah. Like and you can tell that like all he trains for is tennis because it's just one huge arm. I've never actually seen something like that in real life.
It's got really anime character vibes.
It really does.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
It's like veiny. It's like a bodybuilder arm. Like it's a real thing. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. So Maeve weighs like 30 pounds. You're lifting her up like 20 times a day.
Oh, more. Definitely more.
30?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so it's like 900 pounds a day.
Right? Just like every fucking day. That's got to count for something.
That's not even counting the sustained part either, right?
Yeah, so you do that for 100 days. Man, you got 90,000 pounds. You only need 1.91 million pounds left.
And then to catch up.
Then you're all caught up.
I'm coming for you. I'm going to, once this other baby
you're going to have more babies.
Well, usually two, because then
you got to take the Balatro approach. You just have to, the babies gain more mass, and then you hold them for longer periods of time, and then you just start multiplying all of these values together, and then they can get those numbers up there.
Yep,
dual wield.
Yeah, you're on track. Just keep at it. You know. So that's pretty cool. That's I don't know, just a random brag. All right, let's talk about some studio stuff. So first of all, let's just get this out of the way. Crashlands 2 is launching in 2025, not 2024.
Yeah.
So we did it will be early 2025.
Yeah.
When we had our 2024 window announcement, we were like pretty sure that we could get it by like the end of 2024.
Because that was in June of 2023 was when we announced the game. And you can't announce a game with no release window. It's not that's against the rules.
You gotta have something.
So we're like, well, we're halfway through 2023. We, barely had the game done at that point, but we had like all the systems done, or at least drafted. We had like all like everything was moving at that point.
You got like a velocity check, right? And we're like, okay, I think given the mileage we're trying to go, it seems like.
Yeah, and 2024 is a fucking wide window, right? It's like 6 months to 18 months from when we, proposed that date. So we were like, and the nice thing is that as long as we were pretty sure it was going to be middle or end of 2024, no matter what, nobody was thinking early 2024. But the idea was like, as we got closer to the end of 2024, if we then knew we couldn't make it in 2024, we still had a while to figure out like, can we really not make it? Can we make it? Because we had the whole year before we had to tell somebody. But we started to hit that point though now where we're like, well, we definitely know at this point It's like close.
It's just too close.
But it's just we can't
quite
do.
squeeze it in.
And even if we could, we can't launch at the very end of the year. That's not a good time.
That's the thing.
To
Like
do that.
December's like,
December's kind of a dead month. A lot of not a lot, but like you'll have an occasional like AAA game that does like some kind of a Christmas thing, like wanting to be like the stocking stuffer, basically, which are digital stocking stuffer nowadays. But so like you'll have that kind of stuff, which is very hard to compete with. But also, we're working with business partners, and also, we'd be leaning on press and stuff like that. Everybody's gone.
On vacation.
Everybody's on vacation from like mid-December to mid-January.
Well, and the biggest one there
what can happen in that period?
Yeah, and the biggest one there is the translation stuff, because that's the part that kind of lags behind, and because like all of our text has to be done before it can go to loc. So like the game has to be done, the text at least, to get localized. So that like that always has to lag at least some amount, and
if we want players to play it to get tested and give us feedback,
that has to happen after
that. Ideally, they can read it.
Yep.
So there's a sequentialized thing that kind of just we can't do it in parallel. It has to go one thing after the other.
And then you add in again like the end of December. There's basically like a 3-week period where any subset of our third-party people and ourselves will just not be around. So translation isn't going to happen, at the very end of the year.
Like, will happen in some languages, but not others.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
1 week, the people in this country will be on break, and another week some other. And so the net effect is we've known for not very long, actually. We've known for a few months though that like we're not going to 2024. We were just trying to figure out how and when.
Well, there was always kind of a question mark of like it was maybe possible, but then at a certain point we're like, okay, yeah, it's just too tight.
Well, I think this is an interesting thing when you're talking about scope for one, just like a game that is big, where you could like basically you can add like a lot of lateral content kind of anywhere in it, and you could just kind of keep on adding that, But then also with the scope of Crashlands 2, just how big it is, even in terms of just like the completion content of like the golden path. I guess it's a big ass game. And so there is the interesting thing when you're scoping at the very end of a project, because you're trying to figure out, okay, like you really do have to be doing this thing where you're like, okay, what should we definitely have and make sure we get in there? Because we know now, like we got this window and you got to start really squeezing stuff into fit or chopping some stuff off. Yeah, it's tricky.
But it's also something that's I think the hardest thing to anticipate is it's like, we built the first act of the game and we did a playtest with that. And we also released the demo that has the first like couple hours or something like that of gameplay. And when we, a year and a half ago, we were, partway through that chunk of the game. And we were kind of forecasting ahead of, all right, what's it going to take for us to build all the stuff to finish this thing? All we have as a frame of reference is what it has taken so far. Yeah. Right. And what we can't answer is what kinds of weird, like scaling problems will we run into as we add more stuff. And this is just kind of like a really simple example, but we've had to change and redo a bunch of stuff in the world map of the game and how that works. When I say map, I mean like when you're playing the game and you open up the map view, right? Of like, We've like redone a bunch of things about that UI, and even just stuff like we've had to change how far you can zoom out on the map because the world's getting so big that you just can't see everything. Right. And there's all these little like tweaks and things that just kind of keep popping up as the game gets bigger and bigger, where everything worked great when the game was smaller. And then as it gets bigger, that type of a system just doesn't work anymore and you got to redo.
Or even some RAM problems at some point where like we crossed some threshold where all of a sudden like couldn't launch on iOS or would launch for it
was over 2 gigs of RAM.
Yeah. So we like hit some threshold, then we're like, shit. So we have to like take some time because it's if it's not testable in iOS, then now we're gonna start lagging behind on QA, and that's bad. So like these are one of those things where the game has to always be working on all of our target platforms so we can make sure it stays tested.
Yeah. So it's like take a week to just do everything. Tons and tons of RAM optimizations and which we did, got it down to like 900 megabytes.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's less RAM than Levelhead. Which is interesting, but it's just all those little things where like you don't know whether or not you're going to run into problems like that until you do.
Well, and even just trying to estimate stuff because we're in the middle. We're submitting a batch of our second batch of localization text to translators next week. And so we've been like gearing up for that. And we've been trying to like, as we lead up to it, I'm trying to like give the translation team some kind of an estimate so they can, because they have to like schedule dozens of people to like be able to actually do the work and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm like, hey, can somebody give me some kind of a guess somehow of like
how many words we got?
How many words are, yeah. And the answer is basically a flat, who the fuck knows, right? Because we can look at like what's in the first third of the game, or like we can look at what we first submitted to them, but that included like all the UI stuff. And we're not adding a lot of UI elements as the game progresses, right? And so it's not the same kind of content, but also like when we say the game has 3 acts and we kind of approximate and say like, well, okay, each act we're trying to have like feel roughly equivalent, right? Experientially in terms of scale. But does that mean they have the same amount of text in them, you know? And like, no. I mean, I know they literally the same size. Also, no. Because they kind of shrink as they go, and they should. So the things get tied up, you know, as it gets to the end. But also, so many things that started at the beginning and kept on going. So it also grew. And so it's like growing and shrinking at the same time. There's just no fucking way to guess. And like even this week, because we're just like piling in and getting all like things unchecked and things edited and stuff so we can start sending it off to localization. So we're currently sitting at 45,000 words in this submission of new text.
This batch.
In this batch. To be translated, and which is a lot. And actually, it was exactly what we guessed because that was what we did the first batch. So we're like, I don't know, 45K. We'll just call it that. By the time we actually get it out there, it's going to be probably closer to 50. But this week, on Monday, it started at 30. Right?
Yep.
Because the text exists already, but it's just sort of,
but it's not flagged as ready to go. Yeah, and there's no way to like know for sure ahead of time which subset is going to end up being like, yeah, this stuff is ready to go. And this is like the easy thing. This is just like text, right? When you multiply that uncertainty out across all the parts of the game, all the art assets, all the program that's to be done, all the optimization stuff, all the QA stuff, play testing, just like every single piece of it, it's just multiplying uncertainty. We're just Balatroing uncertainty, right? So it just keeps on adding up. And then we're over here being like, you know, a year and a half ago, being like, okay, we need a release window, I guess. It's just made up.
Just throw a dart.
Made up.
I don't know.
Just made up. Yeah. And usually release window is like, we'll run out of money if we don't get it out at this time. So it's like, usually release window is just, we have to get something out. And that might be less game than we wanted. It might be a different game than we wanted, but we have to get something out. And we are also very lucky with how we're positioned right now with Netflix's backing and just how things are going in dev and that kind of stuff, that we don't strictly have to get the game out. Which is why we get to make the game.
Well, we do eventually.
We do eventually. But yeah, we're not under like really strict time pressure from like a financial standpoint, right?
Right.
So
which means we can work on it until we are satisfied with it.
Yeah, satisfied enough.
Satisfied enough. Yep.
Yeah, we have to fight that balance because
we're never actually satisfied, but like good enough.
Because even though like we will run out of money if we keep doing it, you know. And
well, of course.
And further, if we launch it and it doesn't go as well as we hope, then we will have spent a lot more money than we otherwise would have, and now we're at further risk of not being able to keep this thing going. So there's always that pressure of getting things out as early as you can, and we always need to and want to. And also, we're all tired.
It's been a long road.
This is a long time to work on. This is the longest time
kind of like,
we've worked on a thing, you know?
So we kind of like officially started working on it in October of 2020. Yeah. We had like a lot of behind the scenes kind of like planning and like design documents and like tossing around ideas through the middle of 2020. But we were still also coming off of Levelhead at that time and putting lots of work into Levelhead updates and things like that. And so when it comes to actually like having something playable that we were like working on and in code and all that, that was about October of 2020.
You guys started with the multiplayer exploration, which was like a
that was over like the winter break kind of period. Because we needed something in the game first, but
yeah, we had just enough in the game to get us to that point where we could then start experimenting with multiplayer stuff.
Yeah, so we just hit the point where we've surpassed like the average amount of time that people spend in college, just working on this game. Just working on one thing for 4 years.
So I think we're all about ready. I think the game's about ready. We're definitely
ready to work on the next game.
Or I ain't not even say
just take a minute.
I think we just want to get this. Like, I just want to have this game out because also it's been so long since because like even like the Levelhead was the last thing we launched, and and it didn't have the general player interest that we had gotten from original Crashlands and that we were hoping for. So it's been basically since original Crashlands that we've had like an exciting, like what looks like a very exciting launch, you know?
Right.
And so it's actually been 8 years since we've been like, yeah, here's a huge like launch that feels really good, right? It's been a really, really long time. And
To be fair, though, it was 4 years and 3 months between Crashlands and Levelhead's launch.
Yeah,
That's true.
So,
Seems like we got to improve.
4 years is a pretty reasonable amount of time.
But
Like every time we
those
do this,
4
like we
years-
reinvent the whole studio and rebuild everything.
Well, it's a long fucking time.
it's all fine. You know, it's all
It's just a long time.
we're doing good stuff and like the outcomes are good. Everyone's doing great work. We're building cool tools.
We're tired.
All this stuff is true, but also,
Tired boss.
well, I think part of it is we didn't like publicly announce, like show anything until last summer, just a year ago, right? And so we were
2.5 years of just
Yeah.
silently.
and then we've also shared as little as we can, basically, because we're trying to like save it all up, you know. And so
There's so much wild shit.
there's so much, and we don't get to show it
This
to anybody.
game-
And that was
we
part of
haven't
it too.
shown
Is like,
any of it.
yeah, is like just spending this long, knowing how cool the thing is we're making, not getting to show it to anybody, and then adding that anxiety of being like, well, when we finally fucking do,
Yeah, hope it works out.
hope it works out after all that, you know. So I just need to get out. But so I mean, the good news is it is coming out, and it's not a meaningful delay actually, because 2024 was made up in the first place, you know. But also
Time's
like
an illusion, you know?
time's an illusion, but it's also going to be like just in the new year or early in the new year. There's still a window where things get shifted a bit, but it's going to be early in the year. Q1.
We're going as fast as we can. Okay.
Yeah.
Go as fast as we can.
But not so fast that we careen into a ditch and explode.
No,
you know.
not that
So
fast.
that's
Because it's
trying
still
not to crunch. We're trying not to burn out. Trying to be responsible adults here.
and it's in the end, you know, it still has to be one of the best games ever made. That's that's the goal.
One of.
It just
Aim higher. Come on.
there's too many good games. There's too many, and also you can't compare them once you're at that tier, you know. So I think among the best is the only place that any game can be, because
If we get
There's
the
no
number
the
2
best
spot
game.
behind Balatro,
satisfaction.
that'd be fine. Now, for those who are wanting some new, you know, to get your hands on some new Crashlands 2 stuff, we did release some new videos and some new stuff this week, right? So we got the new cozy trailer is out. I think it's probably on our YouTube channel and
YouTube channel has
places.
both. Yep.
So that's just kind of highlighting some of the more like wholesome, cozy aspects of the game, because there's a lot of emotional range in the game, which is a big thanks to Jen's influence as our narrative designer. So there's a lot of cool like ways to like connect with different characters and like grow relationships and like build a home and all this stuff. And so a lot of that stuff is kind of showcased in the cozy trailer. And then in the ballyhoo that we sent out, there's a lot of stuff about like base building and how that all works. And Adam and Jordan put together some pretty cool
It's a great video.
stuff. So check those things out.
Big props to Jordan for making the video work, because basically like my strategy has been for these video versions of the thing is I write a script and then I record it and make some edits while I'm recording, because like when you say something out loud, sometimes you're like that's bad,
different.
you know. And then make sure that the final script is correct, because also we need to then set it off for localization potentially and other kinds of stuff. So basically I do that, and I kind of break it into segments, and I as I'm writing the script, I'm already like knocking it across lines and stuff so that it's like ready to be captions, because there's a whole fucking pipeline of stuff that has to happen with everything we do. It's so fucking annoying. You can't just like make a thing. so I'm
So
like
annoying.
drafting these captions, and then I send his recordings off to him, and I'm like, I give him a little bit of guidance about like kind of what I'm looking for, but mostly I'm just like, I don't know, go to town, And,
Go nuts.
He's delivering. So
And he went nuts.
He did.
Yep.
He did it.
Yeah. So check that stuff out. It's pretty cool, and that'll tide you over until 2025.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So
I'm hoping to
it's better.
squeeze like one more ballyhoo in there somewhere.
Adam's always trying to
be
tell all
about.
the secrets.
Yeah, basically we're in a constant battle of wills between like me and Sam mostly, of like, can I show this
And I'm
thing?
like, please don't, Adam. Please don't.
And I'm like, it's probably fine though, right? If I just get a little sneak peek.
just a little bit, just show an ankle, you know, just a little
yeah,
peek.
I'm strictly on ankles. Ankles and collarbones. That's where we're at.
That's where we're
Nothing
at.
else.
Nothing more.
But yeah, dear listener, though, I'll keep fighting and see if I can squeeze in something, you know, see if I can get some little
Watching you like a hawk.
tidbit. Well, I guess I could just do it. Who's gonna stop me?
You better watch
You're the CEO, so technically the buck stops with you, and nobody can stop you, legally or physically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of the
CEOs
advantages.
are 3 times the size of an average human, so it's very hard to stop.
I think it's
Adam's
mostly a
giant.
remote work advantage, and also because I'm the web person, I hold super credentials on everything that we use. So like,
That's true.
I am literally unstoppable.
the key master and the gatekeeper.
So that just means I have to maintain more discipline, you know, which is annoying, but
Boring.
I believe.
boring.
All right, well, so let's get into a question if we can.
Question.
If we got the time. This question comes from our listeners over at podcast.bsketch.net. The highest upvoted question comes from Bupanoilie Rolleepa, who says, after watching IllegallySam blast through Levelhead at Summer Games Done Quick, I wanted to hear your thoughts on the importance of speedrunning and game design. While I know that Levelhead is very much speedrun focused, does it even matter in a game like Crashlands 2, assuming most players won't speedrun it?
Yeah, you don't really design for speed runs. I think that's what makes
It's just
them
gonna
fun.
happen.
Yeah. All the places. It's like the thing with people speedrunning Baldur's Gate and stuff, where they found out that if you like kill one of the characters, take their corpse, put it in a box, and like yeet it across the map, then you somehow all sorts of bullshit happens.
Yeah,
and
just
you
get to the end.
Yeah, there's stuff like that where it's not like you don't sit down and design the game like structurally for it, unless it literally is like in a racing game like Geometry Dash or Levelhead or whatever else, where that's like an integral part. Basically, time tests are like a part of the thing. You just kind of make whatever you're making, and then the fun part is actually, especially in those cases, is just seeing
what people do.
people break it. Yeah. So
I think it's similar to the discussion we had a few episodes ago about integrating with like Twitch and stuff, right? And like how much do you design for those things? Because it is true that if you have a game that becomes like a speed running thing, then that does create new kinds of opportunities for visibility that you guys wouldn't have.
But in a very, very small, extremely
it's very niche, and also it only happens to games that are already successful, right? So you can't like, you can't make your game so good at speedrunning that it becomes popular because of a speedrunning community.
shit game, but great for speedrunning.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen. But
It's not fun at all, but it's like all these speedrunning features.
Yeah. So like with Levelhead, we had in mind speedrunning. We still didn't design for it, but there were aspects that were like particularly that like when we were talking about some design things, we'd be like, oh, and this would also be good for like the speedrunning community, you know? So things like the really fast restart time and like the death animations and that kind of stuff. So you can just like keep on playing, which is just much better as a regular player experience. But part of also the argument for it when we were debating at the time was also people who want to speedrun the game, like they have that a little less to deal with. And there are some elements of their design choices that, because especially things like going through campaigns and stuff and like what we let you skip versus not skip and that kind of thing, right? Or when people would find some bugs, we would be like, well, doesn't matter that much and makes speedrunning more interesting, you know? So I think there are ways you can keep it in mind, but I do think it's unwise to design for it.
Agreed.
Yep, I think so. And I will say, I'm really interested to see what happens with Crashlands 2, because I don't want to say it's speedrun proof, but it's sort of speedrun resistant. Because we have some game systems that are serialized and have times on them.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Right.
And some things are sequential and like like one leads to another. And if you somehow found a way to like jump to the end of the game or something like that, I don't think you'd be able to actually do anything there unless you did some of the stuff beforehand.
Yeah, it's all tied together.
Unless you find an edge case. It's basically, which is so much what speedrunning is about, right? Because like, if you think about like the story stuff and like the way that all the story works in Crashlands 2 is that we have these like nodes that one leads to the next, and each one has requirements lists, and so the game's constantly checking to ask like, have you satisfied these requirements? Did you do the prior thing? Whatever. But it's checking most of those dynamically, kind of like on the fly, right? And as the team is putting those things together, they are making assumptions about like, well, if we made it to this point so far, this other stuff I'm not checking for is likely true, right? And as the game progresses, the complexity of what's going on gets really, really high, so that those assumptions get leakier in terms of like whether or not they're accurate. And so like Seth is saying, like, I think it would be extremely hard to find like really big significant shortcuts, because one thing leads to the next, and it is very hard to shortcut it.
Yeah, but I will say
but there might be some weird scenario where like we forgot a thing that normally doesn't matter, but if you got there when you weren't supposed to.
Well, kind of, I think the reality though is that because of, you can't 100% tell what the main through line is all the time. And I think that's actually probably the biggest thing, which is like figuring out what the actual required sequence is from A to Z versus all the other paths you can take is not going to be a small.
But that is like what speedrunners do, right? Their whole thing is like, so it would take a long time. You know? Yeah, it'll take a lot of replays for people to find stuff. There's probably some things, but it won't. It's not obvious at all. I think to any of us.
The path to take, and this is something like we've actually had to develop lots and lots of internal tools for visualizing how things are connected. Yes. Because we have all these different game systems that lead into one another. So if you're just like, oh, like which quests lead to which other quests? Well, you can't necessarily just look at quests to answer that question, because, for example, there may be a quest that says, hey, I become available once you have acquired a certain item, right? Except what is not obvious then at that point is, where does that item come from? What if it's just laying on the ground somewhere off in some random zone, and you can't get to that zone until you've done some other quest? And so there's like these hidden connections that are not necessarily obvious until you've played through the thing. Yeah. And so I think people will probably do though, is they will reverse engineer the data.
Yeah. Because the data is all there.
Yeah, the game data blob, which is in, like, at least right now, it's in, human readable JSON, and you can pop it open and, try to make sense of it, but somebody's going to code up a tool that lets them kind of like data mine it and turn it into some kind of a wiki or something.
Well, it is self-documented, because all of the, again, assuming that we leave it intact for a launch, which we haven't really talked about yet, but because in that one file is the description of all of the data structures in data structures that we use to create the editor, which means the titles for things are there, the rules are there, like everything is there because we use it to construct automatically the editor, right? So it's all there, and then all the data is right alongside it. So you can basically like check the data against what you think sort of the description means and how it works. But it's a lot. Like that file is so big, it crashes every editor we open it with, right? And
it has to be parsed in code.
So Seth parses it all in the game to do stuff, and I have written a separate parser that I use to do things like manage for localization, pulling strings out for localization, do that kinds of stuff, right? But kind of nobody anymore can just like open it and look at it. It's big. It's just huge. So
specialized tools.
Yeah, I think it will, but I think without having thought much about it, my first thought is to keep it accessible just to see what happens, because it's so fun watching people.
Oh, yeah. It's not a multiplayer game, so if people want to crack that open and mess with stuff, then that's totally fine. Yeah, and like the thing that I would like to do maybe post-launch, if we don't have time pre-launch, which we probably won't, is to try to come up with some way to like let people like clone that thing so that they can like make changes to it, and the game would just kind of like somehow load that up. That's a pretty complicated problem.
Basically
so like, no promises there, but like that would be kind of a fun thing to do. But so when I say that kind of like the game is speedrun resistant, I would say kind of in the same way that the original Crashlands is, where like in the original Crashlands, if you, for example, like just build the first weapon and no armor, then at a certain point, it just takes you so long to kill anything that you might as well have just spent the time crafting stuff.
Well, we have less of that problem in this one, because the overall curve is considerably more condensed as far as like
we do though, because items are sequential. So like if you want to build a level 2 weapon, the level 1 version of that weapon is one of the ingredients. It's more like upgrading your weapons than
it's mostly that a lot of the sequences that would move you between zones or whatever else are, since they're wrapped in story. It's like if you can't get into a building. You know what I mean? Like there's no way to get into a building.
Yeah, you would have had to talk to somebody and brought something to them, and done a whole sequence of things.
So look, I'm curious. We'll see what people do.
People will find all kinds of crazy shit. And that's where I feel like the speedrunning community, what I love about them is they're always like challenge accepted, you know? So anytime we're like, yeah, this is probably going to take people quite a while to get past this section of it. So we'd be like, yeah, I found a way that if you do this first and then run over here and grab this thing, then you can get past this thing that would normally take 2 hours and 5 minutes. You know, it's like, I would not have thought of that. And these people just.
It's what's fun when you are lucky enough to have a popular game, because just the sheer number of people and the amount of time they put at it, like no matter how unlikely a thing is, you know, like you can explore every edge case you think exists and try to, you know, make it work. But someone is going to find something surprising. And because there's just so many people. And that is, I think, just one of the most fun parts. It's a nightmare if you're dealing with multiplayer.
Yes.
Because you need to keep players contained and you can't, because they impact each other. But for a single player game, it's just fun.
It's the best.
Which, as we've talked about in the past, is why we don't plan on making any multiplayer games. Just because people, what was it you said, Sam, earlier? People are like octopuses.
You can't contain them, man.
Yeah, like an octopus, anything its beak can fit through, it's just going to go in there.
Yep.
And you don't know what it's going to do because it's got 8 freaking arms and it has no form. You know, humans are very similar somehow, where like they just get into stuff and they just start doing things and you can't tell what they're going to do. And then it becomes your problem again as a developer.
It's a lot more fun if you can embrace it rather than trying to figure out how to fight it, you know?
Yeah, which is what single player is all about. So, speaking of which, I don't know if you guys saw, Baldur's Gate 3 added mod support for consoles.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, the consoles
integrated. Well, so they integrated modding into the core game. So I haven't actually looked into it directly. I've just like read through their patch notes and blog posts and stuff. But it's like previously you would download some separate applications that would like manipulate the files and do stuff externally, and the game would watch for those files. But other than that, it didn't really have anything in the game to like support modding. But then with this newest update, there's some kind of interface within the game itself that you can use to like install mods that they have like approved and hosted. Because of course most Baldur's Gate 3 mods are porn, but then the rest of them are just like various gameplay
porn or trademark
tweaks
infringement. You know,
that's the other thing too with like mod content is. Like it's just
porn. It's always
if
porn.
you can do it in an unofficial capacity, that's the only wise way to do it, because otherwise you're doing content moderation, which is just a nightmare.
So I don't know if maybe they have something like maybe like people submit their mods to Larian for approval or something like that, and then they make them available, something like that.
And when you're layered, you've got infinite money, and so like you could hire some people whose job it is to like work through that stuff and like evaluate things, decide if it's good. But yeah, if you're a small studio though, like mod support, multiplayer, all these things, just
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
You gotta do it very cleverly in as hands-off way as possible, so that if players make problems for each other, it doesn't become your problem. All right, well, that's a good question. I think that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producers, Fat Bard and Sampa DaCosta, for putting the podcast together, and thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the community Discord, a way for you to donate, and links to the podcast archives. And if you haven't yet, head on over to Steam and give Crashlands 2 a wish list so that you're ready in early 2025 when it finally launches, and you'll get that email alert and you'll be ready to go. We appreciate it. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.